let me tell you, first of all, the fastest and easiest way to save money in a real estate deal is negotiated, right? It's just paper, right? And as you know, that doesn't always have to start up front, right? Locking down the contract is the number one. And then using the rules of real estate, which is disclosure, and finding problems, right? That either the seller is going to want to fix for you, credit for you.
Everybody, this is Jose Luiz Morales. Welcome back to the Morales Group Show. This is episode number 65. Today we've got a very special guest. His name is Troy Kearns. He's a real estate investor out in Nevada and now across the United States. This is a very special interview. This guy makes over 6 figures a month in net income every single month. Somebody that started from nothing and has built his way up. Really excited to have you on the show, Troy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. So let's just get started. Who is Troy Kearns and how did you stumble on real estate?
So taking you the back road, I'm from Seattle. So I'm born and bred. I lived there 28 years. I moved down to Las Vegas. But prior to moving to Seattle, I bought a couple houses in Las Vegas as a young investor who didn't know jack diddly squat, right? And so I bought him like, hey, my cousin's calling me. He's living down here. He's a school teacher. He's like, man, the market's blowing up down here. You got to have a piece of it. You know, you're making 30% on your money. I don't know about anything about like speculation. Hey, my cousin knows what he's talking about, right? I look up the news. It's all good. So I had started like, buying a couple properties in Washington that were negative cash flows. My first was a condo, right? And that was in 2000. And then there was a house in 2004, which was my first flip. And then I bought 2 properties in Las Vegas that I lost money on for, 10 plus years. I'm still losing money on one of them. I sold one of them finally. I probably should have held on to it if I knew the market was going to do what it's doing right now, but it is what it is. So yeah, I mean, basically, the best thing I just found out the other day, I'm interviewing my mom for my personal story. I found out my house got foreclosed on when I was 7 years old. So I think some of those things leave an impact in you and a drive in you that just like makes you want to not be broke. And that's been my whole thing. I've always been money motivated. It's not anything other. It's been money motivated. And now I feel like I got the money. I still want more of it because I want other things and goals. And like, I don't want to fly commercial. That's my biggest reason right there, And I feel like if I keep pushing a little bit harder, I'll probably get there. So I don't know if that answers your question the best way, but
Yeah, it does. How old were you when you bought your first property out in Seattle? Just out of curiosity.
So I was 24 when I bought my first house.
Okay, good. And then you said that the Seattle properties were negative cash flow. Just for some of the maybe newer viewers, what does that mean? Like
rent was less than the mortgage and the expenses. So essentially on that one, I think I paid 112 at that point in time for that condo. And I'm gonna just throw some numbers out there, but I think it was losing $200 a month. So all my expenses were $200 more than what I was receiving in rent. So I was subsidizing that person to live in my property, which is not a good strategy for investing, as you know. You can't buy many properties doing it that way, and that's what I did. So,
okay, so it's just basically you were losing money on a month-to-month basis, and that I imagine that kind of set you up for the future. The Las Vegas properties that you bought, were those negative cash flow at the beginning as well too, or were those actually positive cash flow at the beginning?
No, so I did everything you possibly could do wrong. Like I really, I didn't. I read the books afterwards, right? And I'm a jump in and figure it out kind of guy, and that's something that I've adjusted a little bit more as I've gotten older. And aim first, fire second. But so yeah, they all were negative, and I bought strict except for the one house that I moved into, which was my second purchase and my first flip, and I did all the construction myself with my uncle, and I said, I'm never doing that again. And that one actually worked out pretty good. I made about $100,000 when I sold that one. But besides that, everything was a losing proposition. The first 3 investments were losers. And the reason that I did well is I made so many mistakes and I had to like suffer through that grind right? And lose even like, I'm making no money as I first start here in Las Vegas. As an agent, I'm making $0, right? Because I haven't sold anything yet. And I have $0 coming in, and I have money I've saved up that is going to this house that somebody else is living in and enjoying, and I'm losing money to the tune of $2,500 a month on my 2 properties in Las Vegas. So I sucked it up I'm still sucking it up. And I just felt like that taught me a big lesson, is never, ever buy a property that doesn't produce cash flow. And that, obviously driving around, listening to my mentors like Robert Kiyosaki and stuff, hearing those words after the final time and going, oh, that's why. So,
it's funny. I stumbled across Robert Kiyosaki in my first or second year of real estate. And I played the game called the Rat Race, and I think it's called Cashflow as well too. And that changed my life forever, just because it's like, okay, owning real estate is good, but it's better if the real estate pays for itself and leaves extra income on top of it, because now you've got enough money for repairs, maintenance, and that sort of thing. So tell us about your story of how you moved to Las Vegas, and then what that looked like right there. How did you get into real estate? Did you start off as an investor? Did you start off as a real estate agent? Tell us more about that.
Okay, so that's a great question. I appreciate you asking it. So I got lucky. So first thing I did is, one of the first houses I bought was a bank-owned property, and I had always followed bank-owned properties, okay? So I knew what it was, and then as I'm being unsuccessful as an agent, because the guy hooked up on the team, we always know it boils down to you, but we want to blame someone. And when somebody sets the wrong stage for you, it's easy to blame them. And that's what happened with my guy. We're still great friends to this day, but he's like, I got more leads than I know what to do with. I quit my job in Seattle where I was selling radio advertising, and I was like a top guy. I moved down here, make no income, take all my savings, and lose it all. So then, as I'm losing all my money from these bad investments, I'm trying to get a job now at this point in time, and I'm not selling real estate, all of a sudden, I take a job back up in Seattle, back selling advertising, and I get my first REO listing because I'd been working on that in the background. So now I've got a Y in the road, and I call my mentor, who's still a good friend of mine, and I called him up. He's a real estate agent in Seattle, and I was like, what do I do? He's like, well, get the money back and don't let that go. Figure out a way to keep that alive. So I went back to my buddy Ito at the time. I said, hey, I got to go back to Seattle. I got a job, but I got this REO account, and they just start lighting me up, like 5 properties, 10 you know what I mean? And I'm like, whoa, this is something. But I was such in a fear mentality, and I think I also mentioned this on Pineda's show. At that point in time, I was drinking a lot, and I really just wasn't clear-headed. So I had to like get to a point where I was clear-headed, where I had my head on straight, and where I could make good decisions. So I went back up to Seattle for 8 months, took a job. One of my buddies gave me a job. Thanked him for that. Got me back so I could. At that point in time, I think I had negative $26,000 in debt in my credit card, and these negative cash flowing properties, another $700,000 in just bad debt. So I got an REO account, and I moved back to Seattle. So as I'm getting these REO accounts, I'm making 25%. As you know, as an agent, that's not very good. But because I didn't do anything other than have a cell phone that I could answer, that was a 702 number. So if they ever called, and tell everybody I'm still in Las Vegas, I'm not in Seattle, right? And so, once I got to a point where I had picked up a few more accounts on the side, working my other job in Seattle, I moved back down to Vegas, and then I was like the #1 agent the next year or two, and I sold about 2,000 houses in a very short period of time, which gave me a massive amount of cash that I had never seen. And I just started buying cheap houses for cash in Vegas because I did the math. I'm like, I'm losing $2,500 a month. If this house is $20,000 and I can rent it out for $700, I get 3 of those and I'm close to even. I get 4 of them, I'm above water. And at that point in time, the houses were so cheap, I was making so much money that like I just figured I could just, once I got to even, I said, why don't I keep going? And I haven't stopped since then. So
basically, there was a point in your life where, you were losing tons of money, and then you got into real estate, started making a lot of money, and then just took a lot of that money and started reinvesting it back into real estate. What kept you going? Like, because I imagine with that much pressure, like losing in debt $26,000, losing $2,500 a month, I imagine that there was a lot of pressure there to kind of do something. What would you say was the mindset? Was there a point where you wanted to give up, in other words, at that point?
You know, I kept toying around with the foreclosure and short sale thing in my head. That was like the big, like, do I do this? And then I'm like, if I do a short sale, I'm committing fraud at this point in time, because I'm, you know, I know a lot of guys were doing it, but I was like, man, I'm a big picture guy. And so I know that, like, I have to be able to sit in front of a banker maybe in 10 years if I'm doing things the right way. And he's going to ask me, why did you do that? I'm going to be like, well, it was a business decision. And he's like, well, you made that decision knowing that you're going to borrow money later. And so yeah, the pressure was there, but I don't have quit in me, except for in some physical exercises, you know. But like in a fist fight or in anything like that, like even with YouTube, I mean, I'm at like 600 and something subscribers right now, and like I'm pumping out videos like at a feverish pace, you know. I know if you're on the right track and if you're heading up the right way, you're just going to have to make a lot of mistakes and figure it out. And the more, if you think of, I'm a very solution guy. I don't think of problems. I only think of solutions. And so if it's a problem, I'm just going to try to solve it, you know. And you know, that me sticking with it and searching for the solution versus trying to find out the easy way out, which is what everybody is doing, led me to the success I have today.
Yeah, big time. Grit, you know, it kind of forced you to figure things out. Now, your strategy towards buying real estate, I know that you mentioned that in Las Vegas, houses were really inexpensive, like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000.
Right.
Were you buying everything in cash at that point, or were you using leverage at all and borrowing money from the banks?
No, I didn't borrow any money at all for the first, like, I think I had 52 units, excluding the 2 that I wasn't making money on, 52. And there were several fourplexes in there, but I bought them all cash over like a 2-year period.
Okay. So basically just taking all the extra income that you were making from your real estate resale business and dumping it back into properties. At that point, at 52 units, let's say $800 a door, you're probably making like gross like $45,000 at that point a month, somewhere around there, right?
I think it was less than that. We had a lot of, you're using California rates. We had a lot of low, like fourplexes, $400 a month. I think we were 25 to 30 gross. And then my guy was ripping me off. That was another thing. Then, you know, I had a guy who was working for me in the REO business, who was a driver, who ended up being my property manager for a while. Worked out okay. Then we found out he ripped us off. So we started managing it myself, or my wife did, my girlfriend at the time, you know. So, no, I bought everything for cash, and I know that's not realistic for people today in Las Vegas, but it is in other cities and states still today, that you can do. And that's what I still do. I buy most of my stuff with cash. I leverage big dollars, and I use, are you a World War II guy, Jose?
Somewhat, yeah. Huh?
Okay. So do you know what the Maginot Line is, or whatever it's called? It's where the French built a line between them and Germany so the tanks couldn't go through. I use those as my little houses that protect me. My small little houses are my protection from bad decisions, right? Like, because it's easy to buy a house for $20,000, put 20 into it, and rent it for 800. That's easy math, right? That's a 20% return. You don't got to put a lot of money in, and then if it's worth 100,000, you can pull your investment out if you want to. But for me, I don't have that problem. I'll use that money for large properties, take the cost segregation. If you want to go into that, we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And take the depreciation as a tax, so I don't pay any taxes, which I never thought I'd say that word. You know what I mean? Like legitimately, legally, 100%, not worried about getting in trouble. You know, that's actually legally, you can do that. So yeah, that took me a long time.
So let's dive into that. So that was my thing at first too. I started I had to use leverage because we're in California, but I started buying single family residences and just for cash flow. And that was great because it helped my business. It helped me reinvest back in the business. $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 of positive cash flow coming in. That helps you hire your first assistant. That helps you marketing costs. That helps with your primary residence. Helps with a lot of stuff. But at some point, I was getting taxed because of all the money, which is similar to you, that I was making in real estate. And I said, how can I reduce my tax liability and pay less in taxes? And I came across in a book of Robert Kiyosaki, it was loopholes of real estate investing, I came up the cost segregation study.
Tom Wheelwright, right?
Yeah, it was that exact book. And I went to my accountant. I told him, why didn't you tell me about this? Like, I'm over here paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. Like, why wasn't I aware of this? Right. And sure enough, I asked him if it was true. He said it was. So what is cost segregation? And how can that help somebody that makes a good amount of income? And how have you used it to benefit you?
Well, so yeah, it's kind of funny. My accountant was opposite. He kept bringing it up to me, but the cost of the report and the fact that I didn't feel he was explaining it to me that in the way that I understood, he didn't he's not one of those guys going to guarantee everything, but cost segregation. So as we know with regular real estate, and if we don't know, with regular real estate, we're able to write off on a single family residence, divide it by the purchase price by 27.5 years, we're allowed to write off that amount. So if a house is, let's just use an easy number, $275,000. You can write off basically, what is that? $10,000 a year. Yeah, $10,000 a year of depreciation. That's a loss on paper for the IRS for people. So against your income, you're losing $10,000 just because of the IRS's accounting rules, right? So cost segregation is accelerated depreciation, where you basically get a tax consultant, an engineer, to take your property, take all of the elements, the sidewalk, the doors, the windows, everything, the floors, every single thing besides what's in the walls that is going to break over the 39.5 years or whatever it is for commercial. And you're going to be able to take that up front as a loss against your income. And because of the CARES Act, which is why people should be buying big time commercial real estate right now, you can take that back as a loss and recover all the money you paid in the last 5 years in taxes. So I got checks from the IRS for $300,000 this year from taxes I paid over the last 5 years because of cost segregation. That's why people need to understand what it is.
So you can actually go back to—
Yeah, that's why you need to fire your accountant, because you need to talk to my guy. I'm serious, because my guy is the reason I'm successful. I have a great accountant, okay? And he brings a ton of value. He called me when that CARES Act passed. He's like, Troy, the new CARES Act allows you, because there's always something hidden in those laws, right? He's like, it allows real estate investors to take a carry back loss. And cost segregation is, I made negative $229,000 last year, which means that all the years I was positive that I paid taxes on, I can carry that loss backwards and recoup my tax money back.
Wow. That's unbelievable. So the way I came across cost segregation is I bought a $4 million building, and I bought it with owner financing. Excellent. And I did a cost segregation study on it, and it gave me $1 million write-off, which basically offset my real estate income for a couple of years, which means that, like, just so people understand, if you make, like, let's say $1 million a year, and you get a write-off on depreciation, $1 million, it wipes out that entire thing for federal purposes, not state, which means on federal taxes, you wouldn't pay any income taxes. Now, the big secret that Troy's referring to is, I used to always, I would always hear, and I don't know if you heard the same thing, real estate has tax benefits. And I would always wonder what the benefits were. And I didn't understand it, but the tax benefits are depreciation, basically, because the depreciation offsets the income that the property produces. With accelerated depreciation, not only can you offset the income of the property, but you can offset income from your business as well, too, as long as you qualify as a real estate professional. I didn't know about the CARES Act. I'm glad.
65% of gross, I think, is what the allowable is. There's something on there. I'm actually going to be doing a YouTube with my accountant, because he's, like I said, he's a super bright guy. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a lot, and he's made me hundreds of thousands of dollars by just giving me good advice. And that's the thing, is I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. In the REO days, I wrote a check one year for like $300,000 or $400,000. So yeah, so like the fact that I could have eliminated that expense, invested in real estate, got cash flow, and paid no taxes, and we're so naive because we don't teach this stuff in our schools, and nobody knows about it. And you got to figure it out through the school of hard knocks, or joining other clubs, or meeting other smart guys like yourself. You know, it's like one of those things. Now, here's another one that you may not know about, and this might rock your world a little bit. Okay. So let's say you do what I do and you buy these houses for cheap, right? You buy them for 50 grand, right? So you pay cash 50 grand, you buy it, you put money into it. So you're all in for 50 grand, but it's worth now 100, right?
Uh-huh.
But you can, let's say you want to do a tax strategy and a legacy strategy at the same time. You have a cause that you care about. I don't know what it would be. Let's say for me, let's say it's veterans, right? You're going to say, this is my nonprofit. Okay. So, because we know control in wealth building is everything, and liability is owning nothing and controlling everything. So the 501(c)(3) in my activity, renting out a low income house, right, is a non-for-profit activity. So theoretically, if I wanted to, and I haven't done this yet, but theoretically, if I wanted to, I could donate my property that I paid for $50,000, that is appraised now for $100,000, to my non-for-profit, which is also owned and controlled by yours truly, and then I get a $100,000 tax credit for donating that property to my charity.
And then a tax credit is different than a tax deduction, right?
It's not a tax credit. It's a tax deduction. It's a charitable donation up to $100,000. It's not going to be as a credit. So you're not going to be receiving money back, but you would be receiving a credit for that donation of $100,000 as charity. Yeah.
It's interesting, Troy, because now what you're talking about is like the more advanced level, because there's different levels. There's the level of buying your first investment property, then it's growing the real estate portfolio, then you're making all this money, then you start thinking about what different tax strategies can you utilize to reduce that, and then you thinking about scaling and building legacy and how you're going to pass these properties on to the family members. What were some of the lessons that you've learned? I know tax-wise, that was some of them. What were some of the lessons that you've learned as growing your real estate portfolio? Maybe some of the hiccups that you ran into early on to some of the more advanced stuff as well, too.
Okay, good question, Jose. So first thing, and I was going to talk about this anyways, is insurance and the misconception about whether you need it or not. So I invest in the Southeast. Insurance will basically make it a bad investment if you pay for it, because it might be $3,000 a year on a $50,000 property. So I just get liability insurance, and I take on I self-insure. So that's a lesson that I've learned. And the reason I learned it is because one year, one of my bills came, and I think I owned 20 or 30 properties at the time, and it was $50,000 for that insurance bill for that year. And it didn't cover everything, right? In the Southeast, unlike California and Las Vegas, there's multiple different insurance policies. They sell flood, they sell wind and hail, and then they sell the major fire and everything else. And so by cutting out insurance that is unnecessary, you can build your cash flow. And really, you're just paying for a safety net that you're really not going to want to use on minor items anyways, because the deductible is too much. So really, I'm saving $50,000 a year. And in those 7 years, that adds up to a lot of money. It's probably $100,000 a year right now, as many properties as I own. So that my insurance cost should be about $100,000 a year. It's down to about $5,000 a year, but I have a huge liability policy. And I would not suggest that for beginning investors, but for people who have the financial means to repair their own properties, I don't think having that kind of insurance on those types of properties is worth it.
Yeah.
So that's like my tip for insurance is get the right, because insurance is totally valuable, but most of the stuff that we buy and the people we buy it from don't understand it. Like if you're dealing with State Farm, Farmers, any of the national brands, just throw them away. Okay. They're not going to be able to help you. They're selling stuff over the counter that's not for an investor. You need to be working with commercial insurance agents who understand real estate. So you want to build relation. And the other major thing that it took me a long time to understand, and why people have been moving at a faster rate than me on some levels, is because I didn't have a good personal relationship bank, right? I had Wells Fargo, I had WAMU, I had all that crap, and they won't loan you any money. And so I built a relationship with a bank out here, and they've loaned me a lot of money. And I would tell you that the first thing that I would recommend somebody do is build a relationship with a local bank that has a vested interest in your success, because Wells Fargo or any corporation doesn't give a crap about who you are, what you do. And unless you're like in the $1 billion club, the $100 million club, you're not even on the radar. No matter if you think you're the cat's meow or whatnot, you're not on the radar, Jose. So the other thing I would say, Jose, is I guess the biggest thing probably is there's not a bad area. There's just bad tenants, right? Like people will rent in any space. I've rented in the worst locations in all of Las Vegas, in the places that people are scared to drive in. And I've had an excellent amount of success, long-term tenants, great relationships with my tenants, because we screen hard. I'd rather have a property sit empty because I don't have any pressure because I own it cash, and qualify the right tenant that might be there for 5, 10 or more years, you know. And I don't jack up the rate on it, because if they move out and I got to turn it and spend more money, I just don't really believe it. I'm going to try to move it up a little bit over time, but I'm going to try to work with a tenant and to build a good relationship with my tenants, but a respectful relationship with my tenants where they know I'm stern and fair.
Yeah, I love that you said there's no bad areas, there's just bad tenants. And I think that's the importance of just making sure that you screen your tenants right. Like, you can buy a property in a good area, but if you don't screen the tenants properly and you get somebody that's a bad tenant in that property, your life is going to be a living nightmare. So the key is having a proper screening process to make sure that you're getting good people in those properties, and the odds of you wanting to stay in the landlord business and continue to buy property essentially increase. Now, I wanted to touch on a couple things. In order to do the liability insurance, you have to own the property in cash, right? Only.
Yeah, a bank is always going to protect their interest, right? So they're always going to make sure that you have insurance to protect their interest, not your own, their interest. So yeah, I would imagine, unless you could get them to subrogate it. I mean, I imagine some lenders, you know, are on the commercial side are probably willing to take some inordinate risks, but you know, more than likely, you're probably not going to be able to do it unless you own it for cash.
So now you're investing in the Southeast, right? What does a $20,000 property look like? Like, what does that look like? I mean, $20,000 in California, you can't even buy it.
It looks like a $700,000 house in California. Okay, that's what it looks like.
Really?
Yeah, like I know you live in Los Angeles, right?
North of Los Angeles, about 45 minutes from Los Angeles. Pretty close. Ventura.
Ventura. Okay, so my buddy lives in Monrovia. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the area. It's, you know, by Pasadena and everything, but yeah, that would be a $7,000 house 5 years ago, and like that. So it's, you know, and I'll give you an example. Biloxi, they're like little 1960s, 1,200 to 1,700 square foot ramblers that I bought. Now those houses are $50,000 and $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. But when I'm buying, here's how fast this market has changed, though. I'm buying houses in Kansas City. I bought 80 houses in the last, or actually more than that. So I'll show you this right now, because this is a good little visual. So this is my, I don't know, let me see. That's the best way to do this. Okay, so this is my Kansas City, I'm trying to get it. This is my Kansas City list of properties, right? And so the red indicates all rented, okay? And then yellow is we're in the middle of working on it, and green it's available, right? So if you look at that list right here, and the number on it is 90 properties, there's a couple spaces in there. So let's say it's 82 or 3. I bought that many properties since January of 2020 in Kansas City, okay? And since I bought my first one for $25,000, $35,000, those same houses are trading at $80,000 now. That's how much that market has changed.
Wow.
And I'm still picking them off one at a time the way I do. So you can still do it if you're just a disciplined investor, but if you're like just chasing deals, you're not going to do it. But yeah, great market for that. I just think people need to get out of their backyard and try other markets, because it's so hard, as you know, especially in California. If you're going to be an investor in California, I mean, you're going to be so like deterred by what it takes to get in. If you could go into another, and especially if you're living in California, you make good money and you have a good savings account. If you take $200,000 to another market and you buy 5 houses with it, you know, you're making a pretty sizable investment. You should have pretty good cash flow on that.
So I've been investing in all of my portfolio has been Oxnard and Port Hueneme, which is Ventura County. And one of the things is that
Oscar?
Say it again.
Do you know Oscar?
Oscar last name?
Velasquez.
Vasquez, but I know Oscar Vasquez. I know Oscar Vasquez. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. He lives in Yeah.
Yeah, he was a big time REO agent for a while as well too. Yeah.
Well, I'm the one that helped him. That's how I know him. Him and I kind of tag teamed some stuff together. I liked him a lot. He was a fun guy.
Yeah, he's super. He's got a fun personality as well. He's super smart too. Like brilliant. Yeah, just the way he thinks. I actually, he was. My parents had a cowboy store and a check cashing business back in the day, and my parents hung out with him once in a while. And before I got into real estate, he was one of the people that I saw go from nothing to a lot. And that kind of inspired me back in the day because I saw somebody go from absolutely nothing to building like a nice portfolio and a nice lifestyle. What I was going to ask you was, okay, so let's say that somebody didn't want to buy in California, but wanted to select a different market. How would somebody go about? I mean, there's so many different markets, so many different cities across the United States. How did you end up in the market, some of the markets that you're in right now? And what process did you go to select that market?
Man, that is the best question you could have asked me, Jose, because the answer is terrible. Okay, so Kansas City was a Monday Night Football game. I'm a big football fan. I love football. And I'm watching Patrick Mahomes play the Colts, and I was looking for a new market. So I looked at Philadelphia, and I bought one property there, and I missed the boat. Like it exploded like Kansas City did, and I just didn't execute quick enough because I couldn't find the right contractors. So Philadelphia I thought was a good market because I'd been there. So usually visiting the market is my first thing. Like I'll look at the real estate online, right? Check it out, see how it is. But that's how I found Kansas City. And then I went and verified like my assumption. I had heard about it in the background, like from a lot of people here in Vegas who invest in Kansas City. I'd seen them doing it. And so it was in my background noise. And then when I saw that game, everything clicked. And I said, this is my new market. And I told my wife, I said, I know I'm right about this. She's like, you're watching a game right now. What do you know what I mean? And I was, so that was how I found Kansas City. And then I went and verified it on the street. And I was like, yeah, I'm 100% right. Like, I know I'm right. So that I felt that was a good market, Midwest, middle of America. It has a lot going on for it. Maybe it's the next Amazon hub. I don't know, So it's got a lot going for it. And then there's sub-markets within that market. So I really like that. What I tell people is if you can ideally find a place that you can drive to within, even if it's an 8-hour drive, within 8 hours of your house, 5 hours of your house, I mean, some place that you can go visit if you need to, because the first time you're investing, you need to be a little bit hands-on, right? So I would say ideally, unless they have some sort of a relationship with a property manager that can do the stuff for them, like I do, I would the way I find markets is I try to invest in stuff that I actually like and believe in. And I thought that Patrick Mahomes in my rationale, and I think I actually think it's come true. I said, this guy's going to put a spotlight on this market. Yeah. Okay. And I think more people like me are going to see what I saw, and they're going to come and gobble that market up like I did. And I just felt like, they put a lot of investments in the city. So that's a big reason I decided to invest there. As far as Biloxi, Mississippi was concerned, the math just made so much sense, and I was just going there looking for something else. Actually, I was looking for land. I had like a childhood dream of owning like this big farm and stuff. I still own it, but but there's no farm. So, I picked that market out. It worked out good. I built a relationship in Louisiana, so I invested in that market. So relationships will play a big part where you invest in. But I mean, there's so many markets. I would definitely tell people to look at the Midwest first if they're looking for affordable housing. I don't like the Northeast. There's too many taxes and laws and things that are not friendly for investors. Midwest has got good people, lots of old housing stock that hasn't come through, and it was settled the same way it's going to be settled this time. So it was settled when people were on their way to California to settle the West. That's how Kansas and Missouri were established as a state, okay? And so right now, as people are fleeing California because it's expensive, they don't like the regulatory body or whatever their reason is, they're going to find a tremendous amount of value in this city like I did. And they're going to be like, wow, I could buy a house. I could sell my house in California for $1 million, right? And I could buy a house here that's bigger than my house in California, have the same lifestyle, even as good of a lifestyle, and I spend $300,000 or $200,000, you know? And so for me, that's the reason I looked at that. And I'm looking at this like as a guy to sell properties. If I work at Burger King and I can qualify for a house, that's a good market for me selling first-time home buyers, you know? And that's what Las Vegas looked like when I first started buying in it. So I feel like every market's going to accelerate because there's a lot of capital on the ground. And as they gobble up the big major markets, they start looking at the secondary markets.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, Jose, about how I select markets, but I usually am price conscious. So I'm specifically looking, like I'm looking at Little Rock and Baltimore right now because I know they're inexpensive and they're, you know, Little Rock would be a small market. Baltimore is going to be a big market, right? So.
Awesome. So basically looking at what markets are lower price, but have pretty decent rents as well too.
And laws.
Say it again.
Laws and taxes. So Midwest, low taxes, good laws, and cheap insurance. Southeast, not cheap insurance.
What I love about your strategy as well too is that once you buy this $20,000, $30,000 house, you invest $20,000 into it. This property is producing $800. I mean, that helps you buy the next one because all that positive cash flow, if you save it, now helps you accumulate more income to be able to buy. And that sounds like that was your strategy from the beginning because you got in a market where prices were so low that you can buy them in cash. Now that produced positive cash flow and it's almost like the way I explain it, like a snowball effect, almost like your money is just snowballing where you're to the point where you can buy 10 properties every single month almost or more just based on all the positive cash flow that you're receiving, which helps the positive cash flow grow, which makes it so that you can buy even more. The question that I had for you was in terms of finding a good deal, like what is your process for that? Because I imagine that like if you're buying a property for 20 and you're putting 20 into it or 30 into it and it's worth 100, it sounds like you're getting a pretty good discount on that property. What would you say would be a strategy for maybe a viewer that's looking for a property? Like, are you buying from real estate agents? Are you buying from wholesalers? Are you going direct to owner? What does that look like?
All the above. So where we're weakest right now and where I was strongest in the past is always going direct. Because I flipped a lot here in Vegas. I had a call center and everything like that. But right now, since I've got so many things going on, you know, my mail is going still because we use Deal Machine, which I think is a great product. And, you know, so I get inbound phone calls and I take down, you know, a few houses a month that way. And then, you know, I have lots of relationships with wholesalers and I'm on a lot of lists. And then I'm a deal junkie, man. I'm always looking, you know, and so you have to be so. And then I got guys who know that I'm looking. I always try to let everybody know what I'm looking for, right? So I'll be like, you know what? Hey, I'm a buyer. If you need this, I'm a buyer. Like if I deal with an agent in one interaction, so obviously having a great agent, right? And somebody who's willing to write low offers for cheap investors that gets it. Like you're going to buy more than one property, right? And you're going to flip them and you're actually going to teach them a lot and stuff. And the reason that I am probably a pretty good guy to work with is because I was taught by the banks. They taught me how to become an excellent buyer, an excellent negotiator. And they taught me all that by watching the transaction between them and the buyer, right? And I was just the agent, and I watch all these little tricks and strategies, and I just picked them up as I'm watching this, and I use them now. And so, let me kind of full circle that answer. So first thing is you got to find an agent who's willing to write a lowball offer, okay? Because a lot of times stuff is just plainly overpriced. And everybody's scared to write a low offer on it. And like, that's going to get the ball rolling, whether it's, you might, and I've had so many occasions where I've had to fight with like a good agent friend of mine. I'm like, just write the fucking offer. Sorry. Just write the freaking offer, you know? And he's like, okay, fine. He's not going to take this. And then next thing you know, he's like embarrassed to call me and say, the guy accepted your offer and I can't believe this. And, you know, it's something like where it was 100 grand and I offered 25 or something like that. And that happens so much because I go just what it's worth, you know, or what I think it's worth. And finding motivated sellers is the number one. That's what I'm going to tell people here is finding motivated sellers. If they've got more time than they got money, finding motivated sellers is the best way. Finding people who are in distress that you can help solve problems for, who are not motivated by money, and don't think that you're ripping them off, because that's not a good relationship. They believe that you're helping them, which you are, and they're not money motivated. You're right. And all those things, because as you know, and I know, that we have to disclose more than most people. So I got to disclose I'm a licensee. I got to disclose that I even disclose I'm buying it at a discount, just so I cover all my bases. But finding the properties direct from the owner is the best deal always, in my opinion. But also I found fantastic deals on the MLS, and I would tell you, there's some rules that I will break now that I used to not break, is I'll go straight to the other agent, where I was always loyal to one agent, but then I would find out that they weren't as loyal to me and on certain things. So sometimes on the listing, to get it, you want to make sure that you write it with the agent who's representing both sides.
Basically, yeah. It's
awesome. But MLS, there's so many different sources. HUD Home Store, especially if you're a first-time investor and you want to get started, you can take advantage of like the fact that you can move into your first one as a flip, turn it into something, qualify for like zero down financing and all sorts of things, and even free money. Just, it's starting is the hardest thing that most people have a problem with. Once you start, you're going to encounter failure. And if you look at failure as just an obstacle in your way of success, you'll figure it out. But if you're not a determined person and you're a quitter, you're never going to be successful in anything anyways, right? So it's like retraining your brain to only think of solutions and success and to ignore everything else.
That's awesome. What do you say? Like, I have people that sometimes we talk to that are just like, oh my God, the real estate market's going to crash. I'm just going to time the market perfectly. Right. And I'm going to wait till it crashes, and then I'm going to become filthy rich. And sometimes the way I think about that is it's really hard to think about, or really hard to time the market. And then two, I feel like those people kind of like procrastinate for a long time. And I've had clients for almost 10 years that are talking about the market crashing already. And in those 10 years, they haven't bought anything, and the real estate market has gone up like crazy. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it sounds like you're just looking for opportunity, and that's what you're focused on 100% of the time, versus focusing on things that you can't control. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I understand if somebody's looking to buy their first house and they're concerned about the market, that like you may want to consider like, pumping the brakes and figuring out a bunch of strategies and figuring out whatever, but don't just focus on not taking action, right? Like if you're focused on just waiting for something else to happen to allow you to invest, why don't you, like you said, why don't you do something that you can control? Make a low offer on something. Continue to make low offers on something. Maybe you'll get something. Find a deal within a market that you're okay with, right? Like if you're in a market that you feel is overpriced by 30%, get a 30% discount. You know what I mean? Don't think of like timing the market. Like, dude, if anybody could time the market, we'd all be filthy rich, right? And we wouldn't do anything else other than time the market. So that's my advice on that is like, nobody can time the market. You obviously know when there's buying opportunities, like, and you can like when they close down the cruise lines, I bought stocks, right? Because you know that that's going to rebound and that is temporary, right? And or if you know that, hey, listen, bad news happened, but it's temporary bad news, then those are buying opportunities. And same thing, if somebody's stressed out and needs to sell their house, they need to do it immediately. I offer solution-minded everything. Like we tell people, hey, we will pay for your quiet title. If they have issues with stuff like that, we are very, and even if we lose money on the deal, we always are going to ask for them as a referral and to build a relationship with the person that we're buying from so that we continue to work with other people that will say, hey, this guy was honest. He did what he said he was going to do. And,
it's a good guy. What I wanted to ask you too is you said that you learned your negotiation tactics from the bank. Like, what would you say, like, what would be some negotiation tactics, if you're able to share any of them, that like, you can benefit like a newer investor?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, the fastest and easiest way to save money in a real estate deal is negotiating, right? It's just paper, right? And as you know, that doesn't always have to start up front, right? Locking down the contract is the number one. And then using the rules of real estate, which is disclosure, and finding problems, right? That either the seller is going to want to fix for you, credit for you, or grind. So that's what I saw a lot. That's where I learned a lot. We call that the grind. So even if we're in contract with somebody and they say, hey, absolutely, you're buying it as is. Absolutely, you agreed to everything here in the contract. But then I go in and I do my inspections anyway for informational purposes only. But I'm going to share that information with the agent and say, hey, listen, I'm good with this deal, walking away from it or closing it. But I'm going to need I'll give you an example today on one. I told my agent, he's like, you check the box, as is, where is? I said, I get it. Go back to him and tell him I want it at list price because I bid it over list. So just go tell him I want it at list price because we couldn't get through the pipe because the sewer scope didn't go through. And he said, okay, great. So that's the grind. Always grinding the mold test, okay? I don't like to use that ever really because that's pretty nasty. But you can find mold in every property. Everybody should know that. And once you find mold, it has such a negative connotation that it's an easy solution to fix, but people are so scared of it that you're going to be able to negotiate. So I saw a lot of that stuff. Not being afraid to walk away from your earnest money because you've got a bad deal. Okay. The reason I bought the 2 properties in Vegas is because I was scared to walk away from my earnest money. So I learned that lesson, not walking away from earnest money. Not being afraid to take a lowball offer. I would just watch these banks take stuff that I thought they would never take, but because guys were watching the time on the market, how many times they've adjusted, they knew that the bank was probably going to take something. So paying attention to days on market is important because especially if it's an REO client or somebody else, they're going to want to take it. Not just assuming that you're going to get a great deal because it's a foreclosure. Seeing value where there's not value. I'll tell you one thing I learned from the banks that I think is a big thing that first-time investments can really low is too many people rely on tax assessor or agent assessor information. And none of the agents measure property these days or anything like that. And so a lot of times you'll buy a property that you think you're getting a great deal on and it's smaller than what you thought you bought. Or in a best case scenario, it's bigger than they thought it was. So I always measure my houses, and then if I measure it and they have an extra addition in Las Vegas, I get the county assessor to come out here, and they only appraise based on what is measured, right? They don't care about it whether it's permitted or not. So then that's going to increase my value if I get that assessed as new square footage. So that's a little trick from like banks and negotiating and finding out, like, for instance, if you found out, like, let's say you knew it was too small and you went in there knowing that, and then you measured it, and then you said, hey, bank, guess what? I was buying this at X, but you marketed it as Y. Now I need to get it for this.
It's so funny. That happened to us recently as well, too, on a property where they were marketing as 2,600. We measure it, it's only 2,000. Yeah, that offer that you made at 639 was based on 2,600 square feet. Now it's only 2,000 square feet. That's 600 square feet less. And the appraiser factored that in as well, too. I love the fact that you said about seeing value where other people don't see value. Because I think, like, I'll give you an example. I bought a 25-unit apartment in California, and most people are like, oh my God, that's a really low cap rate. Like, right. You're not really making that much cash flow. But in California, there's a law called an accessory dwelling unit law where you can build on top of the garages or inside the garages. Right now, I have permits with the city for 9 additional units. So I'm taking this 25-unit apartment and I'm turning it into a 34-unit apartment. But that's part of just having the right mindset and mentality of seeing value where maybe sometimes other people are not seeing value as well, too, as well.
Right. And you know, with commercial, everything is NOI. So if you, like, on my places, you know, you add I had $400 and renting out my parking spaces to my neighbors, and it adds, like, what? Depending on the cap rate, could be up to $50,000 in value just on that small amount of money. So if you understand that, finding that value and realizing that correlation between the NOI and the cap rate, you're going to make some big money by increasing that revenue. Plus, you know, apartments, one thing I've seen, I just bought a 31 unit in Kansas City, and we're going to add storage in the basement, right? Because that's additional revenue. And as our sub-metering is going on, we're going to also add internet as a service, and then we'll just spend extra money, you know, putting a big Wi-Fi together so that the customer, you know, and obviously we're not going to say that we're the owner of that, it's going to be another business like, you know, Kansas City Internet Supply or something like that, because, you know, people think, hey, if the guy owns everything, he's get, you know, they just, there's, you know, the names mean a lot in separation in business entities. So yeah, you're 100%, you're 100% right for what you did with that property. And I would tell you, you know, one thing I don't like is laundry. I don't think that's a great idea for value, but I do like storage.
That's awesome. So tell us about that commercial deal, or tell us about like some of the differences between you investing in residential. We know that you got into commercial, obviously taxes, there's a huge benefit in it for taxes. Do you like residential better? Do you like commercial better? Are you indifferent about it? What are your thoughts on that?
I like commercial because it's more challenging and I don't know enough about it. And that's where I'm more about the challenge than I am about anything else. I like solving the problem and the solution. So for commercial, like, because I don't know as much as I know, in residential, there's only a few exit strategies, right? Yeah. Like you can sell it, rent it, Airbnb it, or maybe that. And that's it. You know, with commercial, there's so many different exit strategies. So commercial by far. Residential I love because it's easy. You can flip it. Obviously, I would rather flip residential properties because it's, you know, you can keep moving it and turning it. But like I said, the NOI, understanding the NOI and the cap rate, how you can just increase that through so many different vehicles and really make that building more valuable by just changing a couple of things. Like on my commercial property, just by, you know, this owner was too scared to get rid of him paying for the electrical and power. And the first thing I did is create a CAM, right? And so that CAM added to my, or reduced my expenses and took all those expenses and put them on the tenant now. But that guy was too scared to do that because he's owned the property for 40 years, you know? And so I did that and that increased the value. So just, yeah, just thinking differently and not being scared to make a bad shot, you know?
Yeah. So yeah. What I like about commercial is the numbers are bigger as well too, you know, like meaning that like what excites me about that $4 million deal is like, it's almost like the first deal I felt like I wasn't like, because I'm selling a lot of real estate. It's almost like the first deal I felt like I wasn't wasting my time dealing with like a toilet, like or anything, because like it's got a lot of potential to go up in value. We're talking about like millions of dollars now with just one deal that it's got the potential to go up in value. For those viewers that don't know what an NOI is, what is an NOI, and what was the CAM as well too? If you can break that down for them,
sure,
that would be.
So an NOI stands for net operating income, which doesn't include a mortgage payment, or as we refer to in the commercial business, debt service. They'd like to call everything fancy names, as you probably know. Just, I don't know why they make it so complicated, but yeah, your mortgage payment is called debt service. So NOI includes your net revenue minus expenses except for debt service. Okay.
Basically profit without including the loan, basically. The profit 100%. That the building produces, basically.
It's assuming that you paid cash for it. That formula is assuming you paid cash for it, so they don't include debt service, which is how you get your cap rate or your capitalization rate. Now, going on to the other part that you asked was CAM, which is referred to as common area maintenance, right? That actually confused me in the beginning because it's really referred to as old school triple net, right? Mm-hmm. So all the CAM means is that it's a fancy commercial word for saying, we're taking more of your money, your management fees, your taxes, your insurance, and anything else that I'm paying for as a landlord, I'm going to take a pro rata share and pass it on to you as my tenant as your CAM.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would just call it, you know, triple net. But yeah, it confused until I actually hired a commercial property manager to work for me. I didn't understand half of the terms that they were talking about, you know.
And I think that's a barrier sometimes for me dealing in residential. Like the lingo was just like very confusing to me. Like it was like cap rate, NOI, RUBS, ratio utility billing system, CAM. And I was like, man, like, but as soon as you get past the lingo, it's actually the same exact thing as owning a single family, or very similar in terms of the numbers. You mind me asking what the acquisition price for a 31 unit would be and what market it's in, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so that's actually a cool deal. So remember I told you I made the only good money I made was on selling that property with the towing business. So I 1031 $750,000 profit into a 31 unit empty apartment building on 409 Armour. So 409 Armour in Kansas City, Missouri. It's a major street. It's a beautiful building. If you saw it in California, this building would be worth 10 million bucks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. It's called the Windsor Manor. It's empty. The guys I bought it from, this is what they're new investors, okay? But they went for a big dog item, right? So because they have a lot of money. What they saw was they had to go through and tear the whole place apart and start all over. I went in there, I'm like, this is rent ready. Like, we just got to paint this. This is good. This is USD. It was owned by the US government before them. So it's built sturdy and solid. There's a few rooms, a couple pieces of drywall, new windows. Everything's good and operational. So I'm like, let's start it back up and fix the problems and rent it for cheap. And so, and when I first went into it, I talked to my mentor and I was like, yeah, I have a plan. I'm going to redo this. He's like, whoa, can you rent them right now? I'm like, yeah. He's like, Troy, stick to the plan. And so, like, sometimes we feel like just because we bought something at a discount or we bought something at a good value, we want to go in there and do stuff that doesn't need to be done. So yeah, that's what I paid for the property. 1.95 is what I paid for it. And I didn't have to put any money down because I had that 1031. So I got in it for $0 out of my pocket, and I have a loan for up to $500,000 in renovation. I think I'll probably be able to get it done for about $260,000. That's what my bid is right now without appliances. So we'll just look for ways to add value in that building too, like adding washers and dryers in the units, and just some small stuff like that, and maybe changing some faces on the cabinets, repainting some stuff, but really not going like this guy was taking everything out and restarting it, and I was like, what for?
It's funny, when I got into commercial as well too, I thought when I bought the $4 million building, I was like, I'm going to renovate this, I'm going to renovate that. And the reality was all I had to do was change flooring, resurface the kitchen cabinets, reglaze the bathrooms, paint it, and it was rent ready. And it looked super clean and super nice as well too. But sometimes people imagine that they have to invest more than they actually have to. One of the things that I notice is, and I don't think a lot of people know about this, but you can actually exchange the sale of a business into a property.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think I've heard that, but I don't think it was on my brain.
No, isn't that what you did with the tow business, or did you cash out and pay taxes? Because that's what I understood.
No, so what I bought, so I didn't explain myself very good. I apologize, Jose. So I used an SBA loan to buy a piece of property for that business. Mm-hmm. And then I sold that property. I kept the business, and I'm in the middle of selling the business as well. So the property I used an SBA, which is a 10% business loan, right? So I put $150,000 down on it to make $750, and did that inside of 13 months. And that's just because I knew what I was buying, and I bought it from somebody who thought it was worth less, and I thought it was, and I sold it off market. I probably could have got more money if I put it on market, but I didn't want to disturb my crew and my team of people at the office. So worked out good though. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Last thing we'll go over. I know that you deviated into a towing business. Would you mind just sharing with the viewers, like, what lessons did you learn from that, and if there's anything that you would do differently in that as well too?
That's a good question. So first of all, I would have never done this again. Okay, so let's start right there, right? I would have done the title business and stayed in something closer to my lane. Or if hindsight was 2020, I would have jumped right into YouTube and into the educational platform. Something that I've been doing for years and years and helping friends of mine invest in real estate that I really am passionate about. It's something that I enjoy and I like learning and teaching. So I would have done that. As far as the towing business, I tried to turn a negative into a positive there as well. I had got my car towed in Miami, and that was a good enough reason for me to start my own towing business. Even though it took me 4 years to actually do it, that was the inspiration for doing it. And when I was in the business, my not quit. Here's the deal with this type of business. I didn't realize how political things are. Mm-hmm. And when you're in real estate, there's so many people that politics don't even play a part, right? because there's so many agents, and really it's like everybody's out for everything, right? So, but when in towing, there's the real money's in metro, right? And having a contract with the municipalities and police department. Well, that's politically controlled. And when you start making your goals known and vocalize them, there might be somebody who doesn't like that goal. And so sometimes it's not, even though you're goal oriented, maybe to keep the goal to yourself, right? So that one, I would say that I have so many guns aimed at me, Jose. I don't know who pulled the trigger, but a lot of different lessons there. Yeah, definitely don't get involved in a business that you know nothing about, unless you're just trying to learn a ton about something that, you know, I'm an expert on towing right now, and I don't know if that's ever going to help me in anything other than when if my car gets towed, I could probably get your money back. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of lessons. The biggest lesson in that business was, you know, it was building political relationships in each market as I get into them. And I have a political consultant in Las Vegas. I have a political consultant in Kansas City. And I'm working on one in Mississippi right now. It's because I learned it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that was every year is a big lesson. And that lesson was, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's awesome, man. Good. You know what I love about that? That you got into the towing business when the idea sparked when your car got towed. You got into Missouri after watching a Kansas City Chief game. So like you're taking like different life events that happen in your life, and you're having certain realizations, you know, like obviously like some of them are better than others, but Missouri, I could see why you would think that the Missouri would be a great market with Mahomes there. Yeah, but great. So anything else that you think would add value to our viewers? Obviously, I've enjoyed our time together. I think that you've provided tons of value. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful?
I mean, I would just say, like, to offer some words of encouragement is, like, I don't make it sound easy, but it definitely has not been easy. It's been a total struggle. And because I'm sitting here now talking about owning 300 units, I could tell you 10 years ago, I was scared shitless. I didn't know what I was doing. And everything has been being uncomfortable and trying to move forward. And it's the same thing as anything in life, right? Like you see your kids playing sports, you see whatever. Like if you're willing to at least participate in the game and try to get better at it, because it's just a game, then you'll be successful. And that once you are successful, the amount of freedom that you're going to have to do what you want to do is like, I'm going to use a real life example. I have a friend of mine who's become a friend. He's a wholesaler. His name's Ryan Haywood. He's out of St. Joe, Missouri. And I watched just quit his job last year, did 72 deals wholesale his first year. Is probably going to hit over 120, 30, 40 this year. And watching his whole life transition in 1 year because of financial success and not being, I think that if people can quit their job and do what you're doing, do what I'm doing, and see the amount of, and push through the hard time that they're already pushing through at their job because they don't like it, then, and if they stay the course, if they listen to the rules of Robert Kiyosaki and other smart guys like him, then they will be successful and they will have an amount of wealth that they want, or that maybe that they weren't expecting, you know, and that they can provide anything that they want for their family and their children and their lives.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend text me something the other day along those lines, and he told me that it was super inspiring to see somebody who's always challenging themselves. And I told him the reality is that both routes are going to be hard. They're just different types of hard, meaning that like the route that you decided to go in, you're going to have some challenges along the way. You know, you're going to get your butt kicked along the way. But the other route has challenges as well, too, you know, has financial challenges, maybe not being able to meet your obligations, maybe not being in a good financial position, maybe living paycheck to paycheck. Both of those routes are going to be hard. You just have to make a decision as to which type of hard do you want. One of them, I would say, is a little bit more rewarding than the other one and leaves you with less regrets than the other one. But you just have to choose which type of hard you want. But obviously, a great show. I can't wait to stay in touch with you and obviously connect with you about more things. This was episode number 65 of the Morales Group Show. 300 units. Over $100,000 a month in net income. Troy Kearns, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. If viewers want to get connected with you, how can they go about doing that?
Well, we're main platforms are TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram in that order. And I would just say follow me, subscribe on everything. On all of those. I put out a ton of content. I think I have 70 videos out today. And it's all geared to investors who are looking to get started. And that's what I'm hoping to be, is probably, you know, one of the guys that just doing things a little bit different than everybody else. I think I have a different approach, the way I do things in different markets than what most guys do. And so if they're looking to, you know, be successful and look at real estate from a guy who, you know, was foreclosed on when his mom was 7 years old, you know, or when I was 7 years old, I know how to do it. You know, most people think, hey, you started somewhere. So just follow me on Troy Kearns channel. You'll hear the whole story there, and again, many times.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Jose.